The Tortoise and the Geese. Once there was a tortoise living near a stream. He had 2 geese friends who lived miles away but flew to visit him every month. Whenever the geese visited the tortoise, the 3 best friends spent all their time playing and searching for food. They also cooked and had many delicious meals together. The 3 lived a peaceful life without any quarrels or fights. At the end of one such visiting day, as usual, the geese flew back to their home.
Goodbye.
Left alone in his house, the tortoise became upset. My poor friends, for years they have always come to this stream to play with me, while I've been lazy and stayed here. He thought and thought about this every day and every night. A month later, when the 2 geese visited the tortoise, he decided to express his concern. "My dearest friends," he said, "you guys have flown visiting me all the time. Meanwhile, I have not even once. How about I come to your house this time?"
Thank you, my friend,
responded one of the geese.
We really appreciate your suggestion. If you'd like to visit us, we're willing to help. Yes, indeed,
said the other goose.
We've thought about inviting you to our house before, but we couldn't find a suitable way to do this. You know, we have wings and we can fly, but you don't. So maybe we should wait until we find a solution.
The tortoise agreed and stopped thinking about it for a while. The 3 friends continued with their peaceful lives. However, this peace did not last long. That year, the summer was much hotter and longer than usual. Plants were scorched and dried up. Hundreds of animals and insects were starving. Living near the stream, the tortoise and the geese lived better than the other animals. However, they could not remain much longer, as the stream was drying up. The 3 friends urgently needed to find a way of carrying the tortoise to the geese's house.
Does anyone have any ideas?
asked one goose. I've been thinking about climbing and sitting on your back. Then you will fly me to your house. How do you feel about that? asked the tortoise.
That would be too dangerous. You might slip and fall,
replied the goose.
Maybe he could hold your neck tight to keep his balance,
suggested the other goose. I don't think so. How could I hold her neck with these 2 short legs? Responded the tortoise.
Oh, it's so difficult. What can we do?
Sighed the goose. One by one, the solutions were discussed, but none sounded right. After a couple of hours, the tortoise had an idea. I might bite a stick so that you 2 can carry me with it to your house, suggested the tortoise.
What a great plan! Why couldn't we think of that earlier?
Said one goose excitedly.
Yeah, let's start our journey right away. I can't stay here another moment,
replied the other goose. So the 3 friends began their journey. The 2 geese held a stick in their beaks, and the tortoise bit the stick between his teeth. They flew over hills, valleys, fields, and plains. They dreamed of their new lives in the geese's homeland, which was a more fertile place without any drought. Many animals on the ground saw that extraordinary scene and clapped in wonder. However, some others criticized the tortoise for using his two friends in such a way. "Silly tortoise! Get down here! You look so ridiculous! You're such a bad friend to make your friends do that. Don't you know how hard it is for the geese to carry you that way?" yelled someone. The tortoise was sad and resentful. Why did these animals only criticize him? However, as he was biting the stick, he could not open his mouth to explain. The two geese understood the tortoise's feelings. They comforted him. However, there was more and more shouting and criticizing, which irritated the tortoise very much. The tortoise was so angry and he wanted to explain. Finally, he opened his mouth to speak, forgetting that he needed to bite down on the stick. In doing so, he lost his grip and fell from the sky. The tortoise got hurt badly and could not continue his journey. "Oh, silly me. I should have listened to my geese friends. I shouldn't have let my anger control me," moaned the tortoise. The two geese landed beside him. They were very worried about the tortoise.
"Oh dear, are you all right? Where did you get hurt? We're so sorry that we couldn't fly fast enough to save you from falling."
I don't feel very well. My whole body hurts so much, and I'm afraid that I cannot continue our journey," replied the tortoise. Luckily, the place where the tortoise had fallen was not experiencing a drought. So the two geese decided to stay there for a few weeks while they waited for their friend to recover. One way or another, the tortoise had learned a valuable lesson after his impulsive act. When doing something important, you need to maintain your focus and not let others affect your work. The tortoise promised not to repeat his impulsive act ever again.
Mike helps a tiger. Written by Sally Dixon. Mike the mouse was on his bike one night when the stars were bright. He looked up high in the sky and could see Bob the bat in flight.
"It's a good night to fly,"
Mike yelled up to Bob. Bob looked down at Mike and yelled,
"It's a good night to ride a bike."
Mike's bike went up the hill, down the hill, and over a path. He stopped by the woods.
"Boo-hoo,"
said a loud voice.
"Who is crying?"
said Mike.
"I will find out who it is. They might need my help."
Mike jumped off his bike and walked into the black woods.
"Boo-hoo,"
said the loud voice again.
"Where are you, and why do you cry? Is there anything I can do for you?"
called Mike. He looked in the woods, but it was quite black.
"I think I need some light,"
said Mike. Mike looked up high and could see Bob the bat in flight.
"Can you help me?"
Mike yelled up to Bob.
Can you bring a flashlight to the woods?
I will find a flashlight and meet you in the woods.
Bob yelled down to Mike. Mike stood by the woods.
Boo-hoo,
said the loud voice again.
Who are you, and why do you cry?
said Mike.
Is there anything we can do for you?
Bob found a bright flashlight. Mike and Bob looked in the woods with the flashlight. They found a big black hole in the ground.
Shine the flashlight into that big black hole,
Mike said to Bob. Light from the flashlight filled the hole, and they could see a tiger. He was shaking with fright.
Who are you, and why do you cry?
said Mike to the tiger. But the tiger did not say anything. All he did was cry.
I think he might be shy,
Mike said to Bob.
Is there anything we can do for the tiger?
Bob said to Mike.
We could get a rope and help him out of the hole,
said Mike.
I will fly and get some,
said Bob. He went up high in the night sky where the stars were bright. Mike sat by the edge of the big, black hole and said to the tiger,
I will sing for you.
He sang a soft song, and soon the tiger stopped crying.
I like that song,
said the tiger with a soft voice. He was a shy tiger.
I am Tim,
said the shy tiger.
I was on my way to pick some red roses and fell down this hole. I had to lie here all day and night.
Bob and I will help you,
said Mike. Bob was flying up high in the night sky. He had a rope.
I will tie the rope to this tree,
said Mike. Tim the tiger went up the rope and jumped out of the big, black hole.
Thank you for being so kind,
said Tim.
I am glad you found me in that hole.
All of them sat in the woods and looked at the sky. The stars were bright in the night sky. They sang 9 songs.
Breakfast in the Jungle.
Written by Sally Dixon.
Fran the panda and Greg the gorilla were in the kitchen of their house. Greg looked out the window and said,
It's a fine day in the jungle. Why don't we make a stack of pancakes and eat them for breakfast?
Fran said,
We should set up a table and chairs in the garden by the vines. Then we could eat our breakfast in the hot sunshine.
Fran found a whisk, a spoon, and a dish in the drawer. She would use these for mixing the pancake batter. Greg took 7 eggs out of the fridge, as well as some other food. Fran stirred the mixture in the bowl and tipped it into a hot pan. The round pancake bubbled. Greg flipped it over and cooked it on the other side. Fran and Greg stirred and flipped many pancakes, and soon they had a high stack of them on a plate.
There must be 1,000,000 pancakes for us to eat,
said Fran.
Not quite 1,000,000, but there are a lot of them,
said Greg. Fran and Greg also chopped up some fruit to put on the pancakes. They chopped up 9 yellow bananas, 7 green melons, and 2 lemons. Fran and Greg set up a table and chairs in the garden. They put up a big umbrella, too. Tall trees grew around the garden, and long vines grew around the trees. They put the plate of pancakes and all the fruit on the table.
It is time to eat our breakfast in the jungle,
Fran said as they sat down. Tweet, tweet, said a sweet voice high up in a tree. Gwen the wren flew down from the tree and landed on the table. Gwen hopped around the stack of pancakes and said,
Can I have breakfast with you? I would like to nibble some of your yummy food.
We like visitors, and that would make us happy,
said Fran. Buzz, buzz, said a little voice high up in the vines. Nan the gnat zoomed down from the vines and landed on the table. Nan buzzed around the stack of pancakes and said,
Your breakfast looks so good. Can I have a crumb or two?
You can eat many crumbs with us,
said Greg.
Achoo!
Behind the house, someone with a loud voice sneezed. The sneeze made a huge breeze, and it blew the vines and the trees. Boom! Bang! Boom! Someone with huge feet walked into the garden. It was Eric the elephant, and again he said,
Achoo!
Eric stopped sneezing and looked at the stack of pancakes. He walked around the table and said,
Can I eat breakfast with you?
We like visitors,
said Fran.
You can sit and eat with us.
Eric sat down on one of the chairs and wrecked it.
Oh no, I'm too big for your chairs,
he said. His face was sad.
We don't mind,
said Fran.
We are glad you are here. You can sit on the ground.
You are so kind,
said Eric. All of them sat around the table and ate breakfast. They squeezed the lemons over the round pancakes and ate them with banana and melon. Soon, all of them were full.
Next week, you can all come over to my house,
said Eric.
I will fry bacon and eggs for us to eat.
The Promise. Written by Curtis Norris. Paul and Jim were best friends and always did things together. On Monday, Jim said,
Spelling is so difficult. Can you help me tomorrow after school?
Okay,
said Paul with a smile.
Promise?
Said Jim.
Pinky promise?
pinky promise.
Paul replied, and they hooked their little fingers together. On Tuesday after school, some boys asked Paul to play football with them. Paul knew he promised to help Jim with his spelling, but he really wanted to play football too. So he did. On Wednesday, Paul smiled at Jim.
Hi, Jim,
he said. Jim did not answer him and did not smile either. He just kept walking to class. At lunchtime, Jim did not sit next to Paul as usual. When Paul got home, he was feeling rather sad.
What's wrong?
Asked Paul's mom.
Jim is mad at me,
Paul answered.
Why?
Asked Mom.
Because I didn't help him with his spelling yesterday,
Paul explained.
Did you tell him you would help?
Mom wanted to know. Paul looked at the floor and said,
Yes, I promised I would.
Oh,
said Mom.
Well, a promise is a very serious thing. You should always keep your promise and do what you say you will.
Yeah, I know,
said Paul quietly.
Now Jim doesn't like me anymore.
Mom smiled and said,
Well, it's not too late. You can still keep your promise. Why don't you go help him now? Better late than never.
Paul brightened and nodded, then rushed out the door to Jim's house. At Jim's door, Paul said shyly,
I'm sorry I broke my promise, Jim.
You hurt my feelings, Paul,
said Jim.
I thought we were friends.
We are,
said Paul.
I am really sorry. I should have kept my promise. Can I help you with your spelling now?
Jim thought, then smiled a little.
Well, I did miss you, Paul. Sure, you can still help me. Thanks. Will you be my best friend forever?
Yes,
Paul nodded.
I promise.
Mila's New Bike. Written by Mary Blake. Mila got a shiny, new pink bike. But she didn't ride it. Didn't Mila like to ride? Of course, Mila loved writing. Still, she didn't write it. One morning, Evan came and asked,
Mila, may I ride your bike?
No,
answered Mila.
I don't want anyone to ride it.
Evan didn't understand. Why couldn't he ride since Mila wouldn't? Mila's bicycle shone brightly, standing in the sun.
That's one beautiful bike,
Bennett said.
The most beautiful I have ever seen,
said Mila, smiling.
May I please borrow it just for tomorrow for the cycling race at school?
No,
answered Mila.
I don't want anyone to ride it.
Bennett's bike didn't work, and without a bike, he couldn't race. But Mila's mind was made up. Bennett went away disappointed. Dad saw all the things that happened. Later that day, he called Mila and asked,
Don't you like your bike, Mila?
I love it, Dad,
answered Mila.
So why don't you ride it? Or at least let Evan and Bennett ride it?
It's so shiny and new, Dad. If I ride it, it may get dirty and scratched, wrecked even.
But Mila,
said Dad,
a bicycle is for riding. I bet your bicycle longs to get out and go. It's a little sad, I think, to have a bicycle and never ride it.
Mila thought for a while and decided to get on her bike.
You're right, Dad,
she said.
A bicycle should be ridden, and I'm going to have the first ride.
Off Mila flew. The next day, Mila loaned Bennett her bike, and he won first place in the race. Later, Mila helped Evan ride her bike. The bike got a little dusty, but Mila wiped all the dust away. Now Bennett is happy. Evan is happy. Mila's bike is happy, and so is Mila.
Teamwork is fun. Written by Colin Rampton. Today, Bennett heard some bad news. Their class would go camping to encourage teamwork. Bennett did not like teamwork.
It's terrible,
he thought. He wanted to do things on his own.
I hope that all of you will have a fun time together. And remember, team is together everyone achieves more.
The teacher explained to the class. For Bennett, it was together everyone acts mean. Bennett was in a team with Bernie and Clara. Bernie was a lazy boy. He did not want to do anything but sleep. Clara dreamt of being a famous singer. The only thing she knew was her silly songs. The mission for Bennett's team was to collect at least 30 sticks and branches to make a good fire. As a team, they were pretty useless. Bernie sat on a log and watched caterpillars. Clara wandered around, sang her songs, and collected a few sticks. Only Bennett tried to complete the mission, but it was not enough. Bennett's team completely failed. Their teacher was not pleased.
Every other team completed their tasks. Maybe your teammates are not your best friends, but that is no excuse. You had a job to do, and you let us all down.
Bennett said,
Sorry, but I don't want to be on a team. I want to do things by myself.
Bennett, teamwork is very important. Doing well by yourself is not enough when you are on a team. Everything will go on successfully if your teammates do well like you,
said the teacher. The 3 kids felt very sorry and ashamed. They said,
We are so sorry. Can we have a second chance? We will not let you down.
The teacher smiled happily and said,
Of course you can.
This time, the 3 kids really enjoyed working together. Bennett realized that Clara had a very nice voice. He was totally wrong about Bernie, who wasn't such a lazy boy. They got along well working together. This really was a meaningful trip for Bennett. He learned that teamwork is very fun, too.
The Magic Spring. Once upon a time, there lived an old man and his wife. They wanted a baby very much. They both prayed to God every day and asked God to give them a child. One day, while taking a walk over a mountain, the old man met a rabbit. The rabbit was hurt and bleeding.
Oh, what happened to you?
The old man asked the rabbit. A hunter has tried to kill me, and he's still after me, the rabbit answered. Could you please help me hide? The old man agreed. He opened his bag and hid the rabbit inside. Soon, the hunter appeared and asked about the rabbit. The old man kept his promise.
He went that way.
He told the hunter. Then he pointed to a distant hill. I want to thank you for helping me, the rabbit said. Then the rabbit led the old man to a magic spring. The water in the spring could heal any wounds. It also made people younger. The old man told his wife and everyone in the village about the magic spring. They all drank the water. Soon they became young again. A greedy man heard the story. He went to the spring and drank as much water as he could. He wanted to be the youngest-looking man in the village. The greedy man drank and drank until he turned into a child. He drank even more water from the magic spring and turned into a baby. The childless couple walked past the magic spring. They saw the baby who was once the greedy man. Our prayers have been answered, the wife said. God has given us a baby. They brought the baby home and raised him as their own. The couple and the baby lived happily ever after.
Be Honest. Written by Curtis Norris. On Friday afternoon, James ran home happily from school. It was finally the weekend. When he burst into the kitchen, his mom greeted him with cookies and milk for a snack. "How was your day?" she asked. "Did your teacher give you any homework for the weekend?" James munched his cookie and answered,
"Just one assignment. I have to write a report on dinosaurs for Monday."
"Then you should get started on it right after your snack," said his mom. But after his snack, James was tired, and he took a little nap in his room. When he woke up, it was time for dinner, and after dinner, he watched a movie.
"I'll do my report tomorrow,"
he thought when he went to bed for the night. But the next day, James played football with his friends, and that evening he played video games until it was time for bed.
I'll do my report tomorrow,
he thought again. But Sunday was another busy day of fun, and by bedtime he still had not written his report. Lying in bed, he wondered what he would do. And then he had an idea. The next day in class, the teacher asked James if he had written his report.
Yes, teacher,
he lied.
I wrote the report, but I don't have it.
Why not? Teacher wanted to know. James looked at the ceiling and said,
Well, as I was walking to school, there was a big wind that took the report out of my hands. It blew down the street. I chased it, but then a dog grabbed it in its mouth. So I chased the dog, but he tore the page and dropped it in a puddle. The report was ruined.
Teacher looked at him a long time, then said, James, that isn't true, is it? James stared at his feet and said quietly,
No, teacher. I didn't write the report. I played all weekend, and then it was too late. I'm sorry.
Teacher smiled and said, That's better. You shouldn't lie, James. It's always better to tell the truth. I'll give you one more day to write your report. Will you promise to do it this time? James smiled with relief.
Yes, teacher, he said. I will do the report tonight, and I will never lie again.
The Monster and the Farmer. Written by Catherine Osornio. There once lived a farmer in a village. He was famous for being hard-working and very clever. Nearby, there was a mean monster that often harmed the crops. One evening, the monster appeared in the farmer's field and yelled,
Here's a new field to destroy!
The farmer was very scared.
The farmer brought out a chest of gold and said,
Here's my savings. Please take it and leave my field alone.
The monster laughed. He had no use for money.
Give me food for the next 3 harvests, or I will destroy your field,
the monster ordered.
After a month, I will come back to take all that grows on the ground.
Thinking for a while, the farmer nodded and agreed. When it was harvest time, the monster was back, but all he got were the radish greens that grew on the ground. The monster was mad. He said,
Next time, I want the roots that grow under the ground.
The next harvest time came, and the monster was back again. But all he got were the rice roots that grew under the ground. The monster was angry. He said,
Next time, I want the roots and the leaves.
Soon, the next harvest came, and the monster returned. The farmer said,
As promised, I only took the corn cobs. All the leaves, stalks, and roots are for you.
Then the monster realized that the clever farmer had fooled him, but he could not do anything. Angry, the monster went far away and was never seen again. The Selfish Giant. Once there was a beautiful garden. The garden was filled with fruit trees and many kinds of beautiful flowers. Children from the village loved to play in the garden. As soon as school was out for the day, they always came to play there. A big old castle sat at the back of the garden. According to legend, a giant once lived there, but he had been gone for a very long time. The giant had been gone so long that no one expected to see him again. One day, the children in the garden heard loud thumping sounds. The thumping was so loud that it shook the earth.
What could that be?
The children asked each other. Then they looked up and saw the giant. The giant was very angry.
How dare you children play in my garden?
The giant yelled.
Go away and do not come back again.
The giant put up signs telling everyone to stay away. Then he built a tall stone wall around his garden.
That should keep those children out? Ha 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 ha!
The giant laughed to himself. Then he went inside to sleep. The plants in the garden were not happy that the giant had returned. The trees and flowers enjoyed the company of the children from the village, but the children were no longer around. The warm sunbeams also decided to leave the giant's garden. Because the giant chased the children out, winter came quickly to his garden. No plants grew, and the weather was cold all the time. When spring and summer came to the village, it did not come to the giant's garden. The giant went back to bed and slept some more. One day, the giant woke up to the sound of a chirping bird. He looked out the window and saw that spring had returned to the garden. Then he discovered that the children found a way into the garden through a gap in the stone wall. The giant now saw the error of his ways and decided to take down the wall. But when he opened the castle door, the children ran away. The giant then saw a boy who was trying to climb a tree. The giant bent over and gently helped the boy climb up onto the branch. He sat down and said,
It is your garden now. I am truly sorry for chasing you away.
The giant then went to work, knocking down the big stone wall. The children all came to play in the garden, and spring returned. For many years, the giant lived in the castle, and he happily played with all the children from the village that came to visit.
We Can Fly. Written by Curtis Norris.
Have you ever dreamed that you could fly? How fun it would be to swoop through the air like a bird! In real life, it is still possible for us to fly too. In fact, there are a few ways we can fly. Let's look at some together. Most people fly with airplanes. The first airplane was flown by the Wright brothers over 100 years ago. It did not fly far, but it was the first step. Now everyone can fly. Today, there are so many kinds of airplanes. Big ones and small ones, fast ones and slower ones. Some planes have propellers, while other planes have big jet engines. Would you like to fly in an airplane? Another way to fly is in a helicopter. A helicopter can fly straight up and down, forwards and backwards, and side to side. It can even hang in the sky like magic. Where are the wings? How can a helicopter fly? Some people fly in big, colorful balloons. Hot air makes the balloon go high up into the sky. The wind pushes the balloon here and there and over the land below. Can you imagine flying in a balloon? People also fly in an even bigger balloon called the blimp. It looks like a giant whale floating in the sky. Some blimps have colorful lights on the side that show messages people can read on the ground. Such an amazing scene! Have you ever seen a blimp? If you are very brave, you can fly with a hang glider. Put on your wings and jump into the sky. Now you are really flying like an eagle. Are you brave enough to do that? Now you know some of the ways that you can fly. If you cannot wait to fly on a plane or a helicopter or a blimp, you can still fly in your dreams. So, close your eyes and fly like a bird.
The Wild Swans. Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen who had 11 sons and one daughter named Alyssa. They lived happily together until one day the queen died and the king remarried a wicked queen. She sent Alyssa to a remote village to live with a poor peasant and turned the 11 brothers into swans.
Fly out into the woods,
said the wicked queen.
Make sure that I would never see you again. If not, I would kill you all.
Poor Alyssa lived a lonely life without her brothers. As she grew into a lovely young woman, she went back to the palace to find her father and brothers. Right after seeing beautiful Alyssa, the wicked queen got jealous. The queen tried to cast spells on Alyssa, but Alyssa was so pure that all the spells had no effect on her. Then the queen put a dark ointment on Alyssa's skin, which made Alyssa very ugly, so that the king didn't recognize her.
Someone has taken away my daughter,
the king said.
This is not her. Away with whomever this is.
Alyssa had to leave the palace. She went into the woods, hoping to find her brothers. She wandered around, eating wild apples and berries. Soon, she met a strange old woman.
Have you seen 11 princes anywhere in the woods?
Alyssa asked.
No, but I once saw 11 swans swimming in the lake at day, and by night they became young men,
replied the old woman. Alyssa hurried to the lake, hoping to find her brothers. There she saw her face ugly in dark ointment. She washed her face and sat down to wait for the swans. As the sun set, Alyssa saw 11 swans flying toward the lake. They landed near where Alyssa was hiding. The sun went down and darkness fell. She saw the swans' feathers fall off, and 11 handsome princes stood in their places. Alyssa cried out, running to her brothers. They were so happy to see each other again.
My dear brothers,
Alyssa exclaimed.
I miss you all so much.
Elisa, how wonderful to see you.
One of the princes cried happily. They told Alyssa all that had happened to them. They lived in a land across the lake, and it was time for them to go back. They persuaded Alyssa to go with them.
Come with us. We can make a net to carry you across, and we can live together again,
one of the princes said to Alyssa. She agreed to go. So the next night, the princes weaved a strong net. Then, in the following morning, Elissa was carried to a beautiful land with mountains, forests, and palaces.
Oh, wow!
The princes lived in a nice cave. Although Elissa was now reunited with her brothers, she still wanted to break the spell that had been cast on the princes. One night, Elissa had a strange dream in which a fairy appeared and told her,
You must weave 11 coats of nettles for your brothers, but you cannot speak until you finish everything. Otherwise, your brothers will be swans forever.
Elissa woke up and exclaimed,
Oh yes, I will do that.
Elissa knew that it would be hard and painful work since the nettles would sting and burn her hands. She started to make coats from the nettle, but couldn't tell the brothers what she was doing. Her hands became blistered and sore.
Out!
One day, a young king came along. He saw Elissa and fell in love with her at first sight. He said to Elissa, Come with me. You cannot live here. I will give you velvet and silk to wear. Elissa couldn't speak, so she could not refuse and say no. So the king put Elissa on his horse and galloped away to his lovely castle. His servants brought all the nettles and the coats. Soon, Elissa became the queen and dressed in beautiful clothes every day. But she wanted to finish the coats for her brothers, so she continued to work on them. However, she couldn't explain to the king why she was weaving. In time, the people thought that Elissa was practicing witchcraft. Since she couldn't speak to defend herself, they persuaded the king that her strange habit of gathering nettles and weaving coats was proof that she was a witch.
It's so strange what she is doing. She must be a witch,
one servant said to the king. But the king didn't believe. Elissa tried to finish the coats quickly. At last, she finished all but one sleeve for her youngest brother's coat. One night, Elissa ran out of nettles and was forced to collect more in a nearby church graveyard where a man was watching. He reported the incident to the king. Immediately, Elissa was brought to trial for witchcraft. She could speak no word in her defense and was sentenced to death by burning at the stake. When she was taken to be burned at the stake, she still weaved the very last coat. As she was brought forward, the 11 swans flew down to her. Hurriedly, she threw each coat over each swan. The swans immediately became princes again, although the youngest still had a swan's wing where there was no sleeve. Elissa could speak now.
I am innocent,
she exclaimed. Then Elissa fainted from exhaustion, so her brothers explained for everyone and the king. As they did so, the firewood around Elissa's stake miraculously takes root and bursts into flowers. The king plucks the topmost flower and placed it in Elissa's bosom. Suddenly, Elissa awoke. The king said sorry to Elissa for misunderstanding her and asked her if she wanted to be the queen again. With all happiness and peace in her soul, Alyssa agreed. Since then, Alyssa lived with the king and her 11 brothers in the castle, happily ever after.
Master of all masters. Once there was a girl who wanted to get a job. She went to a job fair to apply for a position as a servant. At last, an old gentleman hired her and led her to his house. The man lived alone in an isolated house. He believed his knowledge was so great that he always called things by complex names. On the first day of work, the man taught his new servant all these unusual names. He said to her,
"The first thing you need to know is, what will you call me?"
Master, mister, or whatever you please, sir.
The servant answered,
"You must call me Master of all Masters,"
said the man. He pointed to his bed and asked,
"And what would you call this?"
A bed or couch or whatever you please, sir.
She answered,
"No, that's my barnacle. What about these?"
he said, pointing to his pantaloons.
Breeches or trousers or whatever you please, sir.
She answered,
"You must call them squibs and crackers,"
the master said.
"And what would you call her?"
asked he, pointing to his cat.
Cat or kitty or whatever you please, sir.
She answered,
"You must call her White-Faced Simony. Now this."
The master gestured to the fire.
"What would you call it?"
Fire or flame or whatever you please, sir.
She answered,
"You must call it Hot Cockalorum. And what about this?"
The master went on, pointing to the water.
Water or wet or whatever you please, sir.
She answered,
"No, Pondalorum is its name. And what do you call this?"
the master asked, pointing to the house.
House or cottage or whatever you please, sir.
She answered,
"No, you must call it High Topper Mountain,"
replied the master. The servant listened and carefully wrote down everything her master said. Unluckily, that night, a fire suddenly broke out. The servant woke her master in a fright and cried,
Master of all masters, get out of your barnacle and put on your squibs and crackers. For white-faced Simony has got a spark of hot cockalorum on its tail. And unless you get some pondalorum, High Topper Mountain will be all on hot cockalorum.
Because these names were so long and complex, it took the servant a while to finish what she was saying. But the fire spread so quickly that by then it was too late. The master and servant only escaped death by inches and had to watch their house burn to the ground.
What a shame! If only the man had not complicated matters, he and the servant could have stopped the fire and saved the house.
The Old Man and His Grandson. Once upon a time, there was a very old man. His eyes couldn't see very well, his ears couldn't hear very well, and his knees shook when he tried to walk. When he sat at the table, he could hardly hold the spoon. He spilled the soup on the tablecloth, and sometimes it ran down his chin. The son and his wife did not like this.
"Can't you be more careful?"
The wife said. So they made the old grandfather sit and eat in the corner behind the stove. They gave him just a little food in an earthenware bowl. The old man used to look sadly at the table, and his eyes would fill with tears. One day, his shaking hands could not hold the bowl, and it fell down and broke. The young woman scolded him.
"Can't you be more careful?"
He said nothing, but looked even sadder. So, for a few pennies, they bought him a wooden bowl for him to eat from. One day, they were all sitting around inside. The little grandson of 4 years old began to gather some pieces of wood on the floor. "What are you doing, son?" asked his father.
I am making a little trough for you and Mother to eat out of when I am big,"
the grandson said. The son and his wife looked at each other. They felt very ashamed of themselves and started to cry. "We are so sorry, Father," the son said. From then on, they took the old grandfather to the table and let him eat with them. Even if he spilled a little food, they did not say anything.